Seems like we're good to go. So we're going to do this month's webinar of redefining influencers and connecting with your community. A few housekeeping items before we get started. I'm going to ask that everybody puts their views in gallery mode and then speaker side by side, which will allow our interpreters to remain spotlit. We're going to run through those housekeeping items, a little about UNSHAME Kentucky, and then I'll introduce our main speakers for this event. UNSHAME Kentucky is a 12-month evidence-based behavioral change intervention delivered by Shatterproof. Shatterproof is a national nonprofit. The goals of our campaign all surround reducing the stigma held by Kentuckians that surrounds opioid use disorder. This campaign is delivered in close partnership with the Kentucky Opioid Response Effort, or CORE, and we are funded through a SAMHSA grant. Like I said, all of the goals around the Unshamed Kentucky campaign have to do with stigma. Some of those goals are to increase knowledge of opioid use disorder and really let people know that recovery is not only possible, but probable with proper support. We want to improve the attitudes towards those living with OUD or those in recovery from OUD. And we want to build a better understanding for Kentuckians of what opioid use disorder is, how is it treated, what do symptoms look like, and how can we better care for our loved ones with OUD. How we do this through community connection, story sharing, and education. Community connection is working with those organizations in the state of Kentucky that are already out there doing great work. The folks who are running treatment centers, treatment providers, harm reduction coalitions. And one thing that we haven't done on these webinars, when we have that great chat function. So if you are a community-based organization that's partnered with UNSHAME Kentucky, go ahead and give yourself a shout out in the chat. Say, you know, this is who I am and the organization that I'm with. We would love to help you guys recognize each other. And also we want to recognize you. So thank you all for being here. And then another big piece of our campaign is story sharing. Story sharing really helps us put a face to the disease. It helps humanize something that so many Kentuckians and so many people just across the world don't understand. So building that human connection is really important. And lastly, we do this through education, which is a piece that we're doing right now. Our webinars, our graphics, our resource materials that we put out into the community are all done strategically, and we use targeted messages that have been studied and that we know are effective in communities. I'm now going to introduce our speakers for this afternoon's webinar. We have Isabella Boer, Samantha Simmons, and Grace VandenBosch, all members of the digital team at Shatterproof and all members that are working on the Unshamed Kentucky campaign. So they're going to speak on redefining influencers. And Sam, I'm going to hand it over to you and stop my screen share.
Thanks so much, Chip. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just 1 second. All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm one of the influencer marketing coordinators here at Shatterproof. I'm a part of the digital marketing team, and my teammates are also joining me today to speak. So I'll pass it on over to them to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella. I am Digital Advertisement Manager here at Shatterproof, and I'll pass it to Grace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace VandenBosch. I'm also an influencer marketing coordinator alongside Sam.
Thanks so much, everyone. So as Chapin had mentioned, the subject that we will be covering today is redefining influencers and connecting with your community. We will be covering 3 key topics today in our webinar. The first one is how to connect with your community organically through a trusted messenger, why messaging matters, and how to combine messenger and message aspects to create audience-aligned awareness. So with that said, let's jump in to first define what an influencer is. So who are influencers? Influencers are people who build an audience on a social platform through a profile that build a strong and humane relationship with their audience, having the power to influence other people in the way that they think, feel, behave, and on their purchase decisions. Many times when we think of influencers, we may think of someone who has millions of followers, who lives this extravagant life and promotes tons of different products. But fortunately, that's not always the case. I'm here today to help redefine what it means to be an influencer and to show you different people in your community who can be trusted members for your organization, who can be trusted, who can be trusted messengers for your organization, and they don't always have to have a major following to have a major impact. What's great about the Kentucky community is that it's filled with so many nano influencers. Nano influencers are local leaders in your community who have a following on social media of around 1,000 to 10,000 people. The local leaders are small, but they're mighty and can have a really big impact on their audience. So think of individuals who are thought leaders in their own personal niche communities. These local champions can be college students, local athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, photographers, or even healthcare professionals. If you can see here that in comparison to macro influencers, nano influencers, although they have a smaller following, they usually have higher reach with their posts, higher engagement in their posts, and usually they cost a lot less because they have a smaller following. So now that we've defined who a trusted messenger within the community is, let's talk about where we can find these influencers. The best starting point is to identify the people in your community who you would like to reach, and then from there, determine what types of social media accounts would be posting about and following these types of people. For example, if you want to connect with college athletes, maybe a good starting point are local college sports Instagram accounts. Or if you're looking to connect with students, perhaps looking through the Instagram accounts of local colleges. And if you want to connect with healthcare professionals, maybe local healthcare organization Instagram accounts would be a good starting point as well. If you look at this example here, if you're looking to connect with college students, Kentucky Cheer might be a good starting point. They post photos of their team members and tag them in their photos. It could also be beneficial to explore who these accounts are following, who's following them, and who's also engaging with their posts, like who's liking the post, who's commenting on it, and also seeing like who are in their tag photos. Just doing a real deep dive can help connect you to local leaders within your community. So working with these local community influencers can have a huge impact when it comes to delivering messages to your community. Some ways that these influencers have an impact is through building trust, building long-term relationships, creating genuine communication through their messages, and organization relevance within your community. Working with an aligned organization can help influencers as responsible leaders inform communities about issues that impact all of us, So overall, I hope this helps to redefine your idea of influencers and give some insight into how they can help you connect your organization to a wider audience organically. And then with that, I'll hand it over to Grace to talk more about messaging.
Hi, yeah, we're going to go into key messaging and why messaging matters with your influencers. Go for me. So key messages are 3 to 5 bite-sized summations that are going to be explaining what you do, why you do it, how you're different from other orgs doing the similar thing to you, and what value you might be adding with your work. They're going to be used across every platform with every influencer, and they're going to be concentrated, concise statements for your audience to hear and read, understand, and remember. And they help to prioritize your information, ensure that you're consistent with your influencers and across platforms, keep your audience focused and engaged, and a good key message can also help you measure and track your success. So when you're building your key messages, first you're going to go through a brainstorming period where you identify goals, needs, and your target audience. The main one there being your target audience and learning the ins and outs of what they like, what they consume in content, their thoughts, their beliefs, their attitudes towards your organization, your topic. That's where you're really going to use and leverage your existing data about both the audience and your work, and you include your internal stakeholders to really build the main important messages that you want people to use moving forward. Then you'll move into an editing and review period to make sure that your key messages are specific to your org, simple, and very importantly, motivate your audience to act. And then finally, you'll test and implement those key messages. Testing can seem very large and overwhelming, but there are very simple testing strategies like email subject line testing, calls to action testing, seeing how many people land on different pages on your website or responses to customer surveys. And again, here's where you can also leverage existing data that you may know about your audience. And you'll want to test them on your internal, external, and your target audiences, and routinely review them and update them if you know things have may changed. With your key messages, there, especially in work that can be more difficult or heavy, there is a head versus a heart messaging, where your messages that appeal to your head are going to be stats and research, our data, the third-party validated information, and what the information we use to reach a common ground of understanding. While messages that appeal to the heart are going to be our storytellers, our story sharers, following a hero storyline throughout your messaging, really treating the audience more as humans and engaging and interacting with them rather than information sharing with them. Good key messages need both your head and your heart in their messaging, because your heart is going to be the hook that brings your audience in, while the head is going to be what you actually want your audience to remember and be able to share with friends or family. And then with key messaging, it's important to keep in mind, especially with topics that can be very information heavy or fact heavy, is that most people need to learn in bite-sized learning. Microsoft in 2021 found that you have about 8 seconds of people's attention span while they're on the internet. And so you want to really reel them in within that first 8 seconds so that they'll stay and watch through the rest or read through the rest of your content. Bite-sized learning is making your content impactful but easily digestible information. So it's 30-second clips, bulleted information, how-to or 5 tips to content that is very informative but also very easy to read. In bite-sized learning, it's important to simplify. So taking terms or things that may be easier for us to understand on the internal audience, but maybe harder for the external audience to digest or understand. An important thing with this, though, is that you want to simplify topics without minimizing any experiences or journeys that people may have taken along with your key messaging. And so that's where your language guides and your internal language and really having the people first language within your organization is going to be so important, because using that will help you simplify your language, but also make sure that you're still putting people first and not minimizing when you're simplifying. And then with your bite-sized learning, it's very important to know your audience, to know trends that they'll understand and pick up on faster, to know any pre-existing knowledge they may already hold, so you aren't reiterating anything or may seem like you're talking down. So it's very important that you use that information in your research of your target audience in your bite-sized learning as well. And now I will pass it over to Bella.
All right. So now that we talked a little bit about how the messenger choice and how building up your message impacts your campaign delivery, let's dive into audience aligned awareness, which is combining messenger and message aspects. First, let's define what exactly is the audience. So the target audience is a group of people that a business or organization is trying to reach with its message efforts. So the intention here is to target a group of people with education, goals, interests, and problems as your ideal audience. I brought here 5 basic questions that you should ask yourself when you're defining your audience. Because basically you want to target people who will listen to you and proceed to act in a certain way. That could be buying something, participating in an event, or even interacting with you online. So the first question is, who are they? So when thinking about who might be in your audience, you must consider who are the people that identify with your cause. One way to find out is to monitor who follows, who likes and share and comments on your posts on social media, because if someone is willing to engage with you, then the chances that they are your target are huge. And the second question is, what are their biggest difficulties, problems, or desires? So it's very important to don't think about yourself when it's time to define the difficulties, problems, and desires of your target audience. It's very important for you to put yourself in their shoes, so you don't make offers based on what you think. And it's very important for you to make them according to research grounded in data, previous experiences, and analysis of your audience behavior. The third question is, where do they look for information online? Because everyone needs information. Every day we're inundated with tons of information, and when you need the most, where do you go to find your answers? If you identify the communication channels most appropriate to your target audience and try to talk to them using their specific language from the universe, you probably will have success in delivering your message. What real benefit do you offer? So everyone wants solutions to their problems and to make their lives easier. And this is a collective desire, and it's no different for your target audience. So it's very important to think a little bit about your message and the cause behind it, and what you're trying to deliver to people. What kind of problem it solves? What benefits do your product or service offer? And what it can do to solve these problems? What is the main value that you offer? With so much competition, you must try to find your competitive advantage in your niche and always improve what you're delivering to people. Fifth question, and probably the most important one, is who they trust. Because trust is everything to your target audience. A great example from the consumer industry is that no one purchases a product or a service from a company they don't know or they don't trust. Reviews play a great role in this, as they increase trust. Even though that's the last question, reputation for your organization or for your company is very crucial. So taking care of this relationship with your audience is essential as they spread information about your organization on the internet to their friends and to their family. Now that we saw a little bit about the audience, what aspects will impact when you're choosing who you're going to talk to? And how does interfere in your messaging and message choice? So here are the key points that you should consider when defining your demographics and your audience. So the demographic data is age, gender, educational background, where they're located, and it's very important for you to also consider psychographic data, which is personal habits, interests that they have, professional information, engagement in social networks, opinions, attitudes, and beliefs. This will all impact in the choice of your audience and how you communicate with them and what message you're delivering to them. So in what aspects the combination of messenger and message increases the credibility for your cause? It's very important that you use your influencers as message endorsers. As we just went through, trust is a very important part of this process. So establishing authority is the key to deliver a message. It's very important that you partner with people who walk the walk. Social proof is coming through engagement. People will respond to you according to what you deliver to them online. So that's a very important part of this process as well. Working with influencers is a very great opportunity to work your brand humanization. You're putting faces to your work. You're putting people's stories to your work. And that generates proximity to your audience. And that's the great opportunity to build a honest relationship. So once you define your message, once you define your messenger, and you already know the characteristics of the people that you're talking to, we're going to approach something that is called virality. And what is virality? Virality is the tendency of an image, video, or a piece of information to be circulated very rapidly and widely from the internet from one user to another, which is the quality of the fact of being viral. To be successful is in a digital environment, you must be a digital consumer. And while does it tend to be relatively random, there are some things that you can do to increase your chances to achieving viral success, which are catching some trends early. Once you start consuming more in the digital environment, you catch the culture and you see what is trending, what is up right now, and that you can take advantage to spread your message. I believe that working online is like traveling abroad, and that you have to learn the language to speak correctly to people and then to engage with them in the best way. And organic is unique in the sense that you can catch things early, you can take advantage of trends, and you can keep your originality. You can adapt the trends to your audience. And always keep things high quality, because people expect to see high quality content when they're online. And this will help deliver your message in the best way. And consistency is key. You know that changes come slowly, and it's very important for you to think about your online journey as a fitness journey, for example, or as a recovery journey, for example. Change takes time, and consistency is key. I really like the phrase here that the harder you work, the luckier you get. So the more you post, the more consistent you are with your content, the more consistent you are with your audience, the luckier you get that they receive your message and take an attitude towards it. And now that we talked about the messages, the messenger, and the audience that we were talking to, what do we exactly want from them? And now that's when we approach conversions and calls to action, which normally are called CDAs. And sometimes as we're working with behavior change and social marketing, sometimes behavior change conversions can be really hard to track. But there's something that you could deliver to your audience that can be done right now, which is a call to action from your campaign. So the CAs are here to provide guidance, to provide information, to provide an anxiety relief. Because as all of us work with social causes, or even though we're from the consumer industry and then we have something to present and we want people to take an attitude towards it, what is something that they can do now that we explain the cause and we explain how their participation is so impactful? What can they do to help? So the CDAs are going to work as an anxiety relief. CDAs are simple as a sign up, a share, a download, learn more, and register. These are simple actions that can be tracked through your messenger and through your message that will take your cause further, your campaign further, and will give you more information about how they can impact and how they can move forward with the path to behavior change. And another thing when redefining influencers and working with influencers after defining your message is about the conversion tracking. We talked about CDAs. We talked about this conversion piece that we want from the audience. But how do we track this conversion? What influencers must deliver when we work from them? And how are the results tracked? So the results can be tracked by views, which is the simple view of a video that can be tracked by impressions and reach. Impressions usually is when the content is delivered to you in your social page, and reach, and it can be delivered to you more than once, but reach works differently, and it's counted only once per user. So another way that we can track conversions, it's through engagements, people who are liking, comment, sharing your content, saving your content. Also link clicks for subscriptions, for webinar registrations, for events registrations, or even purchasing something from you or from your cause or from your campaign. And a pro tip that I would like to give you is to change your account to a business account. So because the metrics really do look different and you have more access to more information about your audience. Wrapping up all of the information that we saw today, here's a roadmap with the influencer path to drive behavior change. So first we start with discovery, that is moving forward to exposure by defining a message aligned with a social cause. Once you define your message, you're going to define your audience, and then you're going to expose the audience to this message by defining your messenger, which is your influencer. Your messenger will spread your message through research and useful information that they could do to finally feel prepared to call to action and invite them to a behavior change. Invite them to participate on your cause, invite them to like your post or to engage with this so important matter that you have on your social page. And that was it. I hope that you really liked the presentation today. I will pass it to Sam to do our closure, and will leave us with a Q&A space so we can answer to any questions you might have and go from there.
Thanks so much, Bella. That was great. Yeah, we appreciate everybody for attending our webinar today. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them.
So Sam, I'm going to go ahead and put all of our panelists back up here.
Okay.
And Grace, you can go ahead and take your video off as well. So if we're going through this influencer process, if putting myself in the shoes of, say, a treatment provider, how does behavioral change, how will that impact me in my community or in my business?
Bella, do you want to jump in and go over that question in terms of like behavior change and the way that it will impact the business?
Right, absolutely. So the key of driving behavior change is delivering useful or correct information to people so they can embase their beliefs, their attitudes with new information so they can finally drive to behavior change. And that impacts into a sense that not always we rely on different, like once you're looking for information, sometimes you use social media to do it. And once you do this, sometimes you use your closer friends to rely on information that gets to you, or you use your favorite influencers. So that's how you drive behavior change through influencers. You deliver the most useful and researched information to them so they can feel prepared to make this.
Hey all, Asha Carroll, Director of Social Media Engagement at Shatterproof here. Great to be joining you as well for this panel. I think I loved what Bella said in that influencers, we often might think of them in terms of driving purchases, like the team said. And so a purchase can be an action or, can technically be a behavior change, and that somebody goes from not previously purchasing a product or a service to then purchasing the product or the service. So for you, if you're a member of a nonprofit organization or a staff member, or if you're working on campaigns like ours, that behavior change can look very different. Right? So you may be seeking to change knowledge. And so in that case, maybe there isn't a, immediate direct behavior change, but you're introducing that knowledge. However, perhaps you have a goal in working with your messengers or your influencers to share information about how to obtain naloxone. So if that is the case, you're looking for them to go from previously not obtaining naloxone to obtaining naloxone. So in that case, that's the behavior change. Again, I think as we're talking about some of these concepts that originated with more purchase or consumer behavior origins, as we think about their application to our nonprofit goals, that this can take on a great number of roles. Great question.
Thank you both. And I have plenty of questions myself, so I can imagine there are probably some out there. Please remember to use the Q&A feature on Zoom. Again, putting myself as in the shoes of someone who hasn't had prior experience working with influencers, being in an industry that isn't known for working with influencers, where do I start and how do I write that first pitch? How do I make an influencer essentially want to work with me? Open to anyone on the panel. Thank you.
I would say identifying influencers who are aligned with the target audience that you want to reach, and educating them about what it is that your organization is trying to accomplish and finding that common ground, and just gauging, encouraging them to feel the excitement that you feel about your organization can really help to inspire them in different ways that they can deliver the message to their audience.
And I think part of, Chafin, your question with the like writing your pitch and the how do you get them to want to work with you, honestly comes down to your key messaging and why did you want to work with for the org? Why do your state partners care? Why do donors care? That those core key points, and using the same messaging with influencers as well, hitting those same, like hitting the same points that work in other areas of, this is why we're super motivated. This is why your audience should care. This is why we're all here doing what we're doing, and using those same points with your influencers.
That's a really great point. And looking through the progression of communication with an influencer, I think we all work in the substance, in the SUD space. That can bring up a lot of emotion working with people, where as a provider, a lot of the time you have people coming in, you have people bringing you their experience. When you're reaching out to somebody else where you don't know their experience, how do you open up that door to get them to share? Because I think SUD is something where we look at it, and although we might not see it on the surface, almost everybody in, at least everybody in the country, you think about the 6 degrees of separation, almost everybody in the country is maybe 2 degrees away from the effects of SUD. How do you navigate that conversation with someone to empower them to know that they are an expert in that space and that they do have experience? Curious to know how you open that door.
I think that we can start by focusing on the things that that connect us. And I think that's important in establishing a relationship with any influencer. You may not be working with somebody who is directly, perfectly aligned with your space. And in some cases, you may not wish to, because you might end up with a case of preaching to the choir. So as you're looking for your messages to reach more widely, I think that it's important to really establish and connect people back to, number one, what the issue is and what your goals are. And you can often use facts, figures, or statistics to help back that up and instill a sense of urgency. Number two, you then want to help the influencer gain understanding of what their role is in helping you to achieve your goal. So with that, you are working with them as a trusted partner, and you're really making it clear why they are the person. So it might be that they have a subject matter expertise in something else, but it may be still relevant to your goals in some way. So you can simply do that by making clear what that bridge is and really enforcing why you built it into your strategy in the first place, right? Typically, you're reaching out because you have a reason. I would lead with that.
Thank you, Asha and Grace. Looking at this campaign, UNSHAME Kentucky, which is, as we mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, an evidence-based behavioral change campaign. Who are some of, not necessarily asking for examples of individuals, but the outline of the influencers that have been used in a campaign like this? Who has proven to provide impact to their community, and where should we start looking if we wanted to do this, on our own or in our own communities?
I would say that some of the strongest people that we have worked with in the Kentucky community are people like students that are just heavily involved in like the local colleges, or they're on sports teams, and they're really connected with those demographics of people, and they have smaller followings, so they're able to get their message across to their audience in an organic way, that's very authentic. And also we've had a lot of success working with influencers who have previously expressed their connection to the cause on their social media. So they're already educating, and the partnership just is very seamless. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Like I said, I got a lot of questions. I could go all day. If we're thinking about influencers in the digital space, is there any benefit to people who aren't on digital when we work with influencers? How do we reach, how do we use an influencer to reach somebody who isn't on Instagram or isn't on social platforms?
I think that really goes with the educational part of working with influencers. We want to empower the influencers to feel confident speaking about the cause and talking to their audience through their social media platform. And with that education piece, our hope is that they talk to people outside, like offline, and it spills over into like their everyday life, all the things that we teach them through the collaboration, whether that be them talking to like their grandma or their grandparents or anyone who's not on social media in that way. So yeah, I would say just really focusing on educating them as best we can to make them feel empowered.
I think too that, before the advent of social media, there were platforms, and there still are platforms in our communities where people share information. And so many people do so in the oral tradition of, presenting or getting up and speaking at a community meeting, or, bringing awareness to a cause on the super local level. That could be within a community setting, whether it is, faith leaders at church, or whether it is people who interface with schools, or who interface with sports communities, as the team said here. So when we think about those platforms, in fact, all of us are receiving messages everywhere in our lives all the time. So I'm with Sam. I think that when we educate influencers, and that, when we talk about influencers, we're talking of people of influence in the communities, whether or not they have that presence online. I think it can certainly be impactful to power with them, impactful to partner with them. And I think that there's real power in, you could reach out to one person who is not an online influencer by our definition of, let's say they have 1,000 or more followers, but they could be in contact with an audience of 1,000 people over the course of that week, depending on their community activities. So I think we can get creative in thinking about it that way, and apply our modern thinking about influencers back to some more traditional community engagement type work, where we really, again, bring it back to messenger, to message, to audience, and we're just changing the platform.
I think that's a really great point. And thinking about the other spaces that influential people, where people are in our lives. a question that was brought to my attention was, I'm not a content creator. I don't know anything about how to make, what the kids are calling the TikToks. How does the content creation piece work with influencers? Is that something that I completely have to design and tell them what to do, or is that something that they bring to me?
I think that could work both ways. Even though you're supposed to give some guidelines for them to produce the best content aligned with your message. It's a huge pleasure to work with creators so they could produce their content in an organic way that their audience is going to receive, and with naturality, and they have their own personality on their content. So I think it's more of an exchange of providing them with the correct information that you want them to use as a key message, and then giving them the freedom to produce the best possible content that they can.
Thank you for that, Grace. I know you noticed a question in the chat. Do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, just in the question in the chat, reading it again for myself, is that if you're working with an influencer and the comments are open, should the influencer or the organization respond to the comments? I think it's similarly in line with, should the organization create the content or should the influencer and bring it to them? It's a little bit of both. The organization should be aware and be seeing it, but it could be more authentic and more genuine and lead to a better relationship and connection if the influencer is the one responding to the comments in their feed. And that's where it's really important to build out your brief and all of the information in the toolkit that you may give to someone posting on your behalf, so that they're equipped with the information to know how to respond to something that may be harmful or maybe stigmatizing, and so that they can do it, or you can do it, but it may seem better and more authentic coming from them.
I think there's one more consideration that also comes to mind, especially for those of you whose organizations work directly with people with substance use disorder, or who work directly in the treatment or recovery space. So what happens if you get a comment on an influencer's post that references finding help, seeking help, or pursuing recovery or treatment in some capacity? Certainly, like Grace said, we want to equip our influencers with the resources that they need to support that community. But certainly there are limitations to that. So we, in our campaigns, we recommend findhelpnowky.org. And you'll see that we link to that consistently in the UNSHAME Kentucky campaign. If any of you are tuning in from another state, I would recommend working to find the recommended resources supported and endorsed by your state, whether that is a helpline or some sort of online or a telephone or text communication that links people to vetted resources. So your influencer may have opinions about this or may have a desire to help support the community, but at the end of the day, you as the organization are the expert or are the appropriate body to link people to those resources, I think. So we just always want to be really mindful of that when we're talking about human lives at stake. So with that, I would certainly get involved there as the organization, and let your influencer know that this is what you're doing, this is why you're doing it, and it can be a really impactful thing when on an influencer post somebody reaches out or expresses an interest in seeking help. That's a very powerful moment, and we just want to make sure that we handle it sensitively and that we're linking them to those resources appropriately.
Thank you. I'm seeing a question here from the Q&A feature. Can organizations partner with others to be influencers with one another? So can organizations collaborate on a digital space?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great opportunity, as organizations are also seen as influencers as trustworthy information resources. So I think that's mutual opportunity for them to collaborate with each other in the digital space, especially.
And then another question that we had towards the beginning of the presentation, there was the thought of nano influencers costing less. How much does something like this cost? If you were to ask for, one Instagram post from somebody with, say 5,000 followers, how do you work through a budget for something like that?
I would say that the rate of influencer posts can vary from influencer to influencer, depending on the engagement that they're getting on their posts and the amount of deliverables that we are requesting from them. I would say that it could be as low as like some influencers just wanting to work organically because they believe so much in the cause. And then some influencers can charge like $100 for a post or $200. It really just depends on the price that the influencer presents to you. How I approach it is I'll usually ask the influencer what rate that they typically charge for the post, and then depending on whatever budget we have available, negotiate with them from there to find something that's fair for the influencer and reasonable with the cost that you're looking to spend on the influencer.
You might find an influencer that you're really excited to work with and you think they're a great fit, but then when they report back to you with a rate, it might be outside of your budget. And, like Sam said, in those cases, that is never an opportunity to, put the influencer in a position where they're having to compromise their rates. And so instead, I really think you'll get a clear idea of that if you see it's not a fit. And at that point, you have the opportunity to move on. You can just let them know that that's not in budget for you. And that's okay. Influencers too, even those who are just starting out, have got to have an understanding that you're working with a budget, just as, they may have specific rates that they use. So, just as with any relationship or a business partnership, like Sam said, you want to make sure that it's fair for everyone participating. So in that case, I would just say to thank them, let them know that it's out of budget for you, and kindly move on. And you'll likely, as you continue to reach out to folks, you'll eventually perhaps find somebody where your needs and their needs match. So in some cases, there's that matchmaking piece, and it might take a couple tries.
Thank you, guys. And I did see one more question come in through the Q&A feature. So we'll go ahead and answer that. But I want to let you guys know before we do that and wrap up, if you have any additional questions, you can drop them in the chat. They will be recorded and we'll be able to answer them for you offline. But that question was, how do hashtags work in this whole process? What are the benefits of hashtags on content?
I can start us off and at least say that hashtags absolutely do work into this, in both having hashtags for your campaign or your organization are very important so that people can see all of your content compiled into one spot, as well as if you know that your influencer is going to be posting about naloxone or Narcan, or know that they're going to be posting about MOUDs, knowing some hashtags that are popular within those spaces, like hashtag Narcan or hashtag MOUD awareness, and using those as well to then have exposure come to your influencers post in that topic.
Yeah, and being aware of trendy hashtags can also implement and increase your campaign reach and awareness in general. There's a hashtag very popular right now, which is hashtag We Do Recover, that compiles a lot of story sharers, a lot of recover experiences, and people who would like to talk about this that you could take advantage of, and have people to associate with your content in your company through these hashtags.
All righty, well, thank you very much. And now, Sam, I'll ask for you to please stop sharing your screen. And that way I can pull up this right here, which just has the information for our contact. If you want to get involved with the Unshamed Kentucky campaign, you can reach us at unshameky@shatterproof.org. We will also be sharing out this webinar to www.unshameky.org. This webinar will be found under the events tab. As always, we appreciate everybody's willingness to be here to learn something new. I hope that we can see a whole bunch of activated influencers in our community in the future. As always, we need people who are willing to share their stories and organizations that are willing to help push out our messaging. All that information can be found on our website or can be brought to you through our email. So thank you all very much for being here. Grace, Sam, Bella, Asha, Crystal, Chelsea, everybody who helps out with these webinars. Thank you guys. And we will see you next time. Be on the lookout for emails on our follow-up webinar on February 23rd.